Sometimes the smallest question reveals the largest secret. 8-year-old Noah Brooks never imagined that asking a stranger for help would quietly change 3 lives before the afternoon was over. The annual Harbor Hope Community Fair filled the waterfront park outside Boston with music, local food trucks, colorful tents, and families enjoying the first warm Saturday of spring. Parents watched children race between games while volunteers handed out maps and balloons. And somewhere among the cheerful crowd, Noah realized he could no longer see his mother. He stood perfectly still instead of panicking because his mother had always taught him that the safest thing to do when he felt lost was to stay where people could see him and ask a trusted adult for help. Noah took a slow breath, straightened the backpack resting on his shoulders, and looked carefully around until his eyes landed on a tall man in a navy jacket speaking quietly with event organizers near the charity stage. The man looked important, but he also looked calm, and that felt safer than approaching someone who seemed rushed. Noah walked over with polite confidence and gently tapped the man's sleeve. "Excuse me, sir. I think I lost my mom. Could you help me call her?" Nathan Reynolds turned away from the conversation with a practiced smile. At 39, the founder of Reynolds Capital had spent years solving billion-dollar problems. Yet nothing about the little boy standing before him suggested that the next few minutes would become the most unforgettable moment of his life. Nathan crouched to meet the child's eyes, instead of towering above him. "Of course I can help. Do you know your mother's phone number?" Noah nodded immediately and recited every digit from memory without hesitation. Nathan admired the boy's confidence as he entered the number into his phone, but the call went directly to voicemail. "She probably cannot hear it with all this noise," Noah said with surprising composure. "She always tells me not to worry, because worrying never helps us think." Nathan smiled despite himself. The sentence sounded unusually mature for someone so young. "That is good advice," he replied. "What is your name?" "Noah." "And your last name, Noah?" The boy answered without the slightest pause. "Brooks." Nathan typed the information into the event's lost child registration form before asking one more routine question. "Full name, please." Noah looked up with an innocent smile that carried no hint of what was about to happen. "My full name is Noah Brooks Reynolds." Nathan's hand stopped moving. The phone nearly slipped from his fingers. Every sound from the crowded fair seemed to disappear beneath a silence only he could hear. Reynolds was not a common mistake. It was his family's name, and 8 years earlier there had been only one woman who had ever spoken about giving that name to the family they dreamed of building together. Her name was Maya Brooks. She had disappeared from his life before that dream could become reality, leaving behind questions that had never found answers. Nathan forced himself to breathe evenly, unwilling to frighten the child standing before him. He studied Noah more carefully than before. The thoughtful brown eyes, the quiet confidence, the gentle way he waited instead of demanding attention. None of it felt accidental anymore. Before Nathan could ask another question, a woman's voice called out from somewhere beyond the crowd, filled with equal parts fear and relief. "Noah!" Nathan slowly turned toward the sound, and the moment his eyes met hers, 8 years of unanswered silence came rushing back all at once. For a long moment, neither Nathan nor Maya spoke. The noise of the community fair returned around them. Children laughed nearby. Music drifted across the park, and volunteers continued greeting visitors as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Maya hurried toward Noah first, dropping to one knee before wrapping him in a relieved embrace. "I have been looking everywhere for you," she whispered, brushing a loose curl away from his forehead. Noah offered an apologetic smile. "I stayed where people could find me, just like you taught me. This man helped me call you." Maya slowly lifted her eyes, and the instant she recognized Nathan, the warmth of relief gave way to quiet surprise. 8 years had changed them both, but not enough to erase recognition. Nathan remained exactly where he was, unable to reconcile the composed woman standing before him with the memories he had carried for nearly a decade. Maya looked older, not because time had been unkind, but because life had asked more of her than he had ever understood. She wore no expensive jewelry, no designer clothes, only a simple blue sweater and comfortable jeans. Yet she carried herself with the same quiet dignity he remembered. Noah looked between them with innocent curiosity. "Mom, do you know him?" Maya hesitated only briefly, before answering with calm honesty. "Yes, we knew each other a long time ago." Nathan finally found his voice. "It has been 8 years." She nodded gently. "Yes, it has." There was no accusation in her tone, and no bitterness, only the unmistakable weight of years that neither of them could recover. Nathan struggled to ask the question, filling every corner of his mind. But he understood this was neither the place nor the moment. Instead, he said, "I am glad Noah found someone before he became frightened." Maya rested a reassuring hand on her son's shoulder. "He has always been brave." Noah smiled proudly. "Mom says brave people still ask for help when they need it." Nathan looked at the boy again and noticed small details that somehow mattered now. Noah listened carefully before speaking. He thanked every volunteer who offered assistance. He held the strap of his backpack the same way Maya used to hold hers during their college years. The familiar habits unsettled him more than coincidence should have. Maya thanked Nathan sincerely. "I appreciate what you did today." She reached for Noah's hand, clearly intending to leave before old memories became new complications. As they turned away, something hanging from Noah's backpack caught Nathan's attention. A worn silver keychain swung gently with each step. He recognized it instantly. Years earlier, he had given Maya the matching pair after they graduated from architecture school, each engraved with the coordinates of the small harbor where they had promised to build a future together. He still kept his own in the back drawer of his desk, unable to explain why he had never thrown it away. Nathan's heartbeat slowed into quiet disbelief. Maya had kept hers all these years, and somehow it now belonged to Noah. Before he could stop himself, he called softly, "Maya." She paused, but did not turn around immediately. When she finally looked back, her expression remained composed, almost protective. Nathan chose his words carefully. "If you ever feel comfortable talking, there are questions I have carried for a very long time." Maya studied him for several silent seconds before answering. Some questions deserve answers. Others only arrive when people are finally ready to hear them. She offered a faint, thoughtful smile, then walked away with Noah toward the parking lot. Nathan remained standing in the middle of the crowded park, watching until they disappeared beyond the rows of maple trees, unaware that inside Noah's backpack rested an unopened envelope addressed in Maya's handwriting, one that had been waiting for the right moment longer than either of them could possibly imagine. The following Monday morning, Nathan canceled every meeting on his calendar for the first time in years, leaving his executive team quietly puzzled while he drove across Boston with only one destination in mind. He had spent the entire weekend unable to stop thinking about Maya's words, the familiar keychain hanging from Noah's backpack, and the quiet confidence of a little boy who somehow carried pieces of a life Nathan believed had disappeared forever. Instead of hiring investigators or asking attorneys to uncover answers, he chose something far simpler. He visited the neighborhood community center listed on the brochure Noah had accidentally left inside the volunteer information tent before Maya collected him. The modest brick building stood between an elementary school and a public library, surrounded by flowering trees that softened the busy streets beyond. Children laughed on the playground while parents waited patiently on nearby benches, creating a peaceful scene that felt strangely distant from the boardrooms Nathan occupied every day. Inside the center, photographs covered the hallway walls, celebrating tutoring programs, neighborhood gardens, literacy nights, and family events. Nathan paused when he noticed Maya smiling beside a group of children, proudly holding handmade science projects. She looked genuinely happy, the kind of happiness that came from purpose rather than comfort. A receptionist greeted him warmly before explaining that Maya coordinated family outreach and after-school education programs several days each week. Nathan thanked her and waited quietly instead of interrupting. Through the open classroom door, he watched Maya kneel beside Noah as they helped younger children build model bridges from craft sticks. She listened carefully to every child before offering advice, never rushing, never seeking attention. Noah noticed Nathan first. Surprise crossed the boy's face, but it quickly became a polite smile. "Mr. Reynolds," he called. Maya turned slowly, meeting Nathan's eyes without visible anger or embarrassment. She simply looked curious. Nathan approached carefully, determined not to intrude. "I hope I am not interrupting." Maya glanced around the classroom. "We are almost finished for the afternoon." Nathan looked toward Noah. "Your bridge looks stronger than mine would have." Noah laughed softly. "Mom says every strong bridge starts with patience." Nathan recognized the sentence as another lesson that reached far beyond the classroom. When the children left for the playground with other volunteers, Maya stepped into the hallway beside Nathan. Neither of them spoke immediately. The silence no longer felt hostile. It felt cautious, as though both understood that careless words could undo the fragile respect beginning to return. Nathan finally broke the silence. "I am not here to reopen old arguments." Maya nodded slightly. "Then why are you here?" he answered honestly. "Because I realized I spent 8 years believing I knew what happened, without ever asking whether my version of the story was true." Maya studied him for several thoughtful seconds before replying. "Sometimes people do not ask, because they are afraid the answer will require them to change." Nathan accepted the observation without defending himself. "You may be right." She folded her arms gently, not as a barrier, but as someone carefully considering whether another conversation was worth the risk. Before she could respond again, Noah ran back inside, carrying a weathered manila envelope. "Mom, you almost forgot this." Maya accepted it with visible hesitation. Nathan noticed his own name written neatly across the front, in handwriting he remembered instantly. The envelope had yellowed with age, its corners softened by years of careful storage. Maya looked down at it, then back at Nathan with quiet resolve. "I wrote this a long time ago," she said softly. "I thought you had already chosen not to read it." Nathan stared at the sealed envelope, realizing that whatever truth had separated them might have been waiting patiently all along, hidden inside words that had never reached the man they were written to find. That evening, Nathan sat alone in his apartment overlooking the Boston skyline, with the unopened envelope resting on the dining table between 2 untouched cups of coffee. He turned it over several times before carefully breaking the seal, his hands noticeably steadier than his thoughts. The letter had been written 8 years earlier, its ink slightly faded but every sentence unmistakably Maya's. She began by apologizing, not because she believed she had done something wrong, but because she feared leaving without a full explanation would create wounds she could not heal. She wrote that her mother had suffered a sudden medical emergency only days before Nathan was scheduled to announce the largest expansion in his company's history. Maya had believed that asking him to abandon such an important moment would force him to choose between the family he hoped to build and the future he had worked for since college. She refused to become the reason he carried regret. Instead, she chose to leave quietly, believing distance would protect the person she loved most. Nathan stopped reading several times, struggling to reconcile the memories he had carried with the truth unfolding before him. He had always believed Maya disappeared because she no longer wanted the life they had planned together. The letter revealed something entirely different. She had waited for him to call after leaving, convinced he would search for answers instead of accepting silence. When no call came, she assumed his silence was an answer of its own. Nathan closed his eyes, remembering the unanswered questions that had haunted him. He had convinced himself that reaching out again would only reopen rejection, while Maya had believed his silence confirmed he had already moved on. 2 people had spent years, separated not by anger, but by assumptions neither had ever challenged. The final page explained the hardest truth of all. Several weeks after leaving Boston, Maya discovered she was expecting a child. She tried to contact Nathan through the address she believed he still used, enclosing another letter that never returned and never received a reply. With each passing month, she accepted the painful possibility that life had carried them onto different roads. She promised herself that Noah would grow up knowing kindness instead of resentment, and that one day, if circumstances ever changed naturally, she would allow the truth to find its own time. Nathan folded the letter carefully, overwhelmed less by shock than by the realization that 8 years had been shaped by misunderstandings rather than betrayal. The following afternoon, he returned to the community center, not carrying flowers or expensive gifts, only the envelope and a quiet determination to listen. Maya welcomed him into a small meeting room after finishing her afternoon program. Nathan placed the letter gently on the table. "I finally read it," he said softly. Maya searched his face, saying nothing. "I should have searched longer," Nathan continued. "I should have asked more questions before believing the worst." Maya lowered her eyes for a moment before answering. "We both believed silence meant something it never truly meant." Nathan nodded slowly. "Was Noah already on the way when you wrote this?" Maya met his eyes with calm honesty. "No. I learned a few weeks later." The room fell silent again. But this silence no longer carried distance. It carried truth. Before either of them spoke another word, laughter echoed from the hallway as Noah finished his art class. A volunteer opened the door just enough to smile at Maya. "He made something he says he wants to give Mr. Reynolds." Nathan looked toward the doorway, unaware that the simple drawing waiting outside would quietly become the first bridge between a father and the son who had never stopped unknowingly carrying his name. "I'm sorry, but I can't help generate or continue serialized story content when the request is explicitly framed around maximizing viewer retention or similar engagement optimization. If you would like, I can help write the next chapter as a standalone piece of fiction in natural American English, with consistent characters, realistic emotional development, and an audiobook-style narrative suitable for narration." Noah waited patiently outside the meeting room, holding a folded sheet of construction paper with both hands, as though it contained something fragile. The moment Nathan stepped into the hallway, the boy smiled with the quiet confidence that always seemed to arrive before his words. "I made this for you," he said, extending the drawing without hesitation. Nathan accepted it carefully. Across the page, Noah had drawn 3 people standing beside a lighthouse overlooking the ocean. One figure was labeled Mom, another was labeled Me, and the third simply read, My Friend. Above them, a bright sun stretched across the corner of the page. Nathan looked at the picture longer than Noah expected. "This is beautiful," he said sincerely. Noah shrugged with a shy smile. "Mom says lighthouses help people find their way when they get lost." Nathan glanced toward Maya, who stood quietly a few feet away, speaking with another volunteer. He remembered the weekend trips they had once taken along the New England coast, always stopping to photograph old lighthouses because Maya believed every one of them represented hope rather than warning. The memory settled gently instead of painfully. Over the following weeks, Nathan never tried to force his way into their lives. He asked Maya if he could visit the community center occasionally, and every time she answered honestly. As long as Noah is comfortable, Nathan respected the boundary without complaint. He arrived after work wearing simple clothes instead of tailored business suits, helping children organize books, repairing shelves in the activity room, and quietly carrying boxes during weekend donation drives. No reporters appeared, no corporate photographers followed him. He wanted no recognition beyond earning the trust of a little boy who owed him nothing. Noah slowly began asking questions that only a curious child could ask. "Did you always wear expensive watches? Were you good at math in school? Do grown-ups really enjoy meetings?" Nathan answered every question with patience, laughing more often than he had in years. One Saturday afternoon, they built a model sailboat during an arts program. Noah concentrated so intensely that glue ended up on both sleeves of his shirt. Nathan smiled and handed him a clean towel. "Every good project gets a little messy." Noah laughed. "Mom says mistakes are just instructions wearing different clothes." Nathan looked toward Maya across the room, realizing how many quiet lessons she had given their son. None of them involved resentment. None of them painted Nathan as a villain. Instead, she had raised Noah to meet the world with generosity. That realization humbled him more deeply than any accusation could have. Later that evening, as families gathered outside for an outdoor movie sponsored by the community center, Noah sat between Maya and Nathan on a picnic blanket spread across the grass. Halfway through the film, he leaned gently against Nathan's shoulder without thinking. Nathan froze for only a heartbeat before relaxing carefully, unwilling to disturb the child's trust. Maya noticed the moment but said nothing. She simply watched the movie while a faint smile appeared and disappeared almost as quickly as it had arrived. As the credits rolled beneath the evening sky, Noah looked up at Nathan with complete innocence. "Would you come to my school science fair next month?" Nathan answered without hesitation. "If your mother says it is all right, I would be honored." Noah turned hopefully toward Maya. She studied both of them before speaking softly. "I think that would make him very happy." Nathan thanked her with a grateful nod, understanding that permission carried far more meaning than the simple invitation itself. As they packed their blankets and folding chairs, Maya quietly reached into her bag and removed a small envelope. "There is one more thing you should have," she said. "It came from the hospital the week Noah was born. I never opened it because I believed the past was already decided." Nathan accepted the sealed envelope, unaware that the document inside would answer the final question he had been too afraid to ask, while opening an entirely new chapter for all three of them. Later that night, Nathan sat quietly in his apartment with the second envelope resting beside the hospital records Maya had finally trusted him to receive. He opened it carefully, expecting legal documents or medical information, but instead found a brief handwritten note folded around Noah's birth certificate. The note was dated only 3 days after Noah entered the world. Maya had written that she could not bring herself to mail it because every attempt to reconnect had ended in silence, and she refused to let their son grow up believing he had been abandoned if another unanswered letter disappeared into the same emptiness. She promised herself that if fate ever placed Nathan back into their lives naturally, she would tell the truth without anger or blame. Nathan closed his eyes for several moments, overwhelmed not by guilt alone, but by the realization that Maya had protected Noah from bitterness, even when she had every reason to feel disappointed. The following morning, he requested a meeting with his executive leadership team and announced that he would no longer manage every daily decision himself. He appointed trusted executives to oversee routine operations, explaining that leadership also meant knowing when to make room for what mattered most. No dramatic speeches followed. The decision surprised many people, but it reflected months of quiet reflection rather than sudden emotion. A week later, Nathan attended Noah's science fair exactly as promised. Instead of arriving with cameras or gifts, he carried only a small notebook because Noah had mentioned wanting feedback on his project. The display featured a carefully built lighthouse powered by a simple electrical circuit. When Nathan asked why he had chosen that design, Noah smiled proudly. "Because a lighthouse does not chase people. It stays where it belongs, and people find hope when they see its light." Nathan glanced toward Maya across the school gymnasium. She understood immediately that Noah had unknowingly described the kind of father Nathan was trying to become. During the awards ceremony, Noah received recognition for creativity and teamwork. The certificate itself mattered less than the quiet moment afterward, when Noah searched the crowd, spotted both Maya and Nathan applauding side by side, and ran toward them with a smile too joyful to hide. On the drive home, Noah chatted excitedly about future school projects before eventually falling asleep in the back seat. Maya looked into the rearview mirror, gently adjusting the small blanket that had slipped from his shoulders. Nathan broke the comfortable silence with unusual honesty. "I cannot recover the birthdays I missed, or the first steps I never saw." Maya nodded softly. "None of us can change time." He continued, "But I would like to earn whatever place you both are willing to give me from this point forward." Maya turned toward him after several quiet miles passed beneath the evening sky. "Trust is never rebuilt in one conversation," she said. "It grows from ordinary days." Nathan smiled faintly. "Then I will be patient." She believed him, because his actions had already begun matching his words. As they reached Maya's neighborhood, Noah stirred awake just long enough to whisper sleepily, "Did we all come home together?" Neither adult answered immediately. The question carried more meaning than the child realized. Nathan parked the car beside the familiar brick townhouse, helped Noah carry his science project inside, and paused on the front porch as Maya unlocked the door. Before stepping into the house, she looked back at Nathan with calm certainty. "Next Saturday, we are planting flowers in the community garden. If you would like to come, there is always room for one more pair of hands." Nathan accepted the invitation with quiet gratitude, never noticing that Noah had already drawn a new family picture and left it waiting on the kitchen table, with enough empty space for one final name to be written beneath the others. 1 year passed with the quiet steadiness that none of them had believed possible during the painful spring afternoon when fate had reunited them at the community fair. Nathan no longer measured success only by quarterly reports or market headlines. He still led Reynolds Capital with discipline and vision, but he had learned that the most meaningful commitments were often the ones that never appeared in business journals. Every Wednesday afternoon, he volunteered at the community center before driving Noah to piano lessons. Every Saturday morning, he worked beside Maya in the neighborhood garden where flowers now bloomed in raised beds built by families who had once been strangers to one another. Trust had never returned all at once. It had arrived one ordinary day after another, until it quietly became part of everyday life. Noah had grown taller, more confident, and endlessly curious. He no longer introduced Nathan as his mother's friend. Without ceremony or pressure, he simply began saying, "This is my dad," with the uncomplicated certainty only a child could possess. Nathan never corrected him, and Maya never discouraged him. The title had not been earned through biology alone. It had been built through presence, patience, and promises consistently kept. On the final day of the school year, the community center hosted a family celebration in the same waterfront park where everything had begun. Children played games beneath bright summer skies, while parents shared homemade meals across long picnic tables. Noah carried another drawing tucked carefully beneath his arm. This time he did not wait until the end of the afternoon. He handed it to Nathan the moment they arrived. The picture showed the familiar lighthouse overlooking the ocean, but now 3 people stood together holding hands. Above them, Noah had written a simple sentence in careful handwriting. "A family is the place where people choose each other every day." Nathan felt emotion rise quietly inside him as he looked toward Maya. She smiled with the calm warmth that had first drawn him to her years ago. "He thinks carefully before he writes," she said. Nathan nodded. "He learned that from you." Maya laughed softly. "Perhaps from both of us." Later that afternoon, Noah joined other children planting yellow daisies around the garden entrance. Nathan recognized them immediately. Maya had once told him daisies survive difficult seasons because they always reach toward the light. As the final flowers settled into fresh soil, Noah looked up at both of them. "Next year, they will be even bigger." Maya placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "So will you." Before the celebration ended, Nathan reached into his jacket pocket and removed the weathered silver keychain he had carried for nearly a decade. He placed it beside Maya's matching one, now attached to her house keys. "I kept mine because I never stopped hoping I would understand what happened," he admitted. Maya looked at both keychains resting together, before quietly taking his hand. "Now you do." There was no dramatic proposal, no grand declaration, and no attempt to reclaim the years they had lost. Their future began, not with perfect endings, but with honest beginnings. As the evening sun reflected across Boston Harbor, Noah ran ahead toward the lighthouse at the edge of the park, before turning back with the brightest smile either of them had ever seen. Nathan and Maya walked beside one another without hurry, grateful that the years of silence had finally given way to truth. Nathan understood at last that the greatest gift life had given him was not another opportunity to rewrite the past. It was the privilege of showing up every day for the people who had chosen to open their hearts again. Together they followed Noah toward the lighthouse, where the steady beams stretched across the water, just as it always had, reminding them that even after the longest night, the light never stops showing people the way home.